I found out I was being let go 72 hours before launch, while in the middle of patching a bug that caused exactly 1 in every 417 payments to silently fail and never log the error. That kind of bug doesn't show up in unit tests. It lives in the shadows, random, maddening, elusive. I'd been tracing it for days, manually flipping flags, combing log traces by hand, holding the entire payment gateway together with caffeine, duct tape, and a script I wrote at 2:14 a.m. that no one even knew existed. I remember squinting at the line. Return false, kill switch for testing only. I paused, hovered my mouse, then left it alone. Didn't even comment it out, just closed the file. An hour later, the VP of Engineering, Ethan Miller, Silicon Valley royalty with teeth too white to be trusted, called a sprint reset. New leadership, new energy, new direction. I knew what that meant before he even said it. I was the legacy system. I was the tape over the check engine light. I was the ghost in the machine who'd kept the billing stack alive since version 0.3, and I was about to be erased. Nothing personal, Ethan had said, with a smile that could curdle paint. We're leaning out. You've documented everything, right? Everything. Not that anyone read it. And before I go further, if you're still listening, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Over 97% of people who hear these stories never do, and honestly, it makes a huge difference to the team that brings these to life. A like or a comment helps more than you'd think. Anyway, I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I packed up my badge, dropped my work phone in the little manila envelope, and walked out through the same door I'd held open for a dozen interns over the years. One of them now ran front end. Another led product. I built the infrastructure. They built the company culture. You guess who they kept? Back home, I cracked a beer and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I should have deleted the debug branch, or at least archived it, but that would have been messy, spiteful, unlike me. I'm not a saboteur, I'm a systems person. I build, I stabilize, I document. Besides, they had Julian now, bright-eyed, loud-talking, GitHub glory-hunting Julian, who'd once asked me what middleware meant like it was a bad word. Last I heard, he was rewriting the payments pipeline from scratch. Bold move, 2 weeks before a major launch. That night, I got a Slack DM from Emily in QA. You okay? It read. No punctuation, no emojis. Just those 2 words that carried more weight than any exit interview ever could. I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I already knew she'd be the one piecing it together when the launch went live. She was sharp, the kind who noticed when test cases disappeared. I fired up my personal laptop, looked at the logs one last time. Everything was clean, time-stamped, transparent, just one branch, one line, one truth sitting quietly in a repo no one checked twice. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I'd just stopped catching their mistakes for free. The funny thing about being invisible is that nobody notices when you leave, but they always feel it when you're gone. The meeting wasn't even on my calendar. That should have been the first red flag. I was on my second espresso, halfway through replicating a payment timeout that only happened when a user clicked submit within 1.2 seconds of page load. Don't ask me how I found that. I live in edge cases. And then boom, Ethan's assistant popped into Slack with a cheerful, "Hey, quick sync at 11?" The kind of chirpy tone that always precedes a corporate mugging. I walked into the Zoom room already knowing I wasn't walking out with my job. Ethan didn't even bother turning on his camera. So listen, he began, like we were old college buddies about to split a check. We're doing some high-level restructuring across engineering, making things leaner, faster, more agile. I waited for the part where he remembered my name. It never came. Next to him was Lindsay from HR, her camera on, her smile rehearsed, her eyes doing that empathy pantomime like she'd drawn my name from a bingo wheel this morning. Aaron, this is strictly performance neutral. You've been a valuable part of the team. This just aligns better with our current velocity goals. No handoff, no walkthrough, just a link to a generic severance packet and a question that landed like a gut punch. It's all documented, right? I nodded slowly. They didn't deserve my notes, but they had them. Every ticket closed, every corner case annotated in Confluence, every temp flag logged and labeled. Even the debug scripts had callouts, including the one I'd just been using, return false, kill switch for testing only. I had highlighted that line earlier that morning. I remember because I'd hovered my mouse there for a full 10 seconds, wondering if I should refactor it out, move it somewhere safer, but I didn't. I left it. And now, sitting in a virtual room with a VP who didn't know what a shadow deploy was, and an HR rep who was probably booking Pilates after this, I let that line stay where it was. Because I knew no one would look. I was off the system within 30 minutes. No send-off, no announcement. Just a cold message in my inbox that access had been revoked. My badge stopped working before I even reached the elevator. A quiet deletion, like I was a memory being garbage collected. By 2 p.m., Julian had pushed a new build note. Final pre-launch build, cleaning up legacy branches. I watched from my personal Git mirror. Yes, I'd set one up years ago for redundancy. And no, it wasn't against policy. I watched him cherry-pick commits like a kid grabbing candy off a shelf, skipping the boring ones. Skipping mine. The debug branch remained untouched and deployed. That night, I got takeout, poured myself a drink, and reread my own README file just to see how much hand-holding I'd left behind. It was all there. Too much, really. Every function traced, every edge case labeled like a museum exhibit. It read like a love letter to a code base no one loved back. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger needs energy. What I felt was dimmer, like the light in a room after someone pulls the plug, and it takes a moment for your eyes to adjust to the dark. They called it streamlining. I called it losing the only person who knew where the wires were buried. Julian strutted into the role like he'd invented Python and personally mentored Guido van Rossum. First thing he did was post a Slack message to the Nord Engineering General Channel. Cleaning out legacy clutter today. If something breaks, it wasn't built right. The timestamp was less than 6 hours after I was let go. Legacy clutter. That's what he called it. 14 months of a payment stack that had survived version rollbacks, vendor transitions, a country-specific VAT fiasco, and 3 straight weeks of platform instability when Stripe silently changed an API. I had built layers of resilience into that system, one patch at a time. Julian. He skimmed the surface like a tourist at a war memorial. I still had read access to Confluence. It'd be another 2 days before someone remembered to remove me. I watched him leave dismissive comments on half the pages I wrote. Deprecated, he tagged one. Refactor needed, another. On the doc titled Staging versus Production Gateway Nuances, he simply typed, LOL. When I wrote that doc, I'd been dealing with a duplicate transaction bug that cost the company $18K in refunds in 1 week. But sure. Well. Meanwhile, leadership had their eyes glued to a different screen entirely. Launch marketing. PR was buzzing. Some minor celebrity had agreed to tweet about the platform on release day. There were Slack threads titled, "Launch Party Snack Ideas." I wish I were kidding. Designers were in Figma polishing button shadows, product was arguing over feature flags, and no one, not one single person, ran a full-stack transaction test from front to back. Payments weren't sexy. Payments weren't visible. Payments just had to work. Julian wasn't malicious, just the kind of arrogant that's dangerous in a pre-launch window. He was too busy optimizing imports to realize he hadn't even merged the debug branch I left behind. Or worse, maybe he had. But he didn't trace it all the way through. He'd asked in one comment thread, why did this have a kill switch at all? No one answered. Emily from QA tagged him once. Make sure to test against staging B before merging. He responded with a shrug emoji. I got 2 DMs that week, the first from Emily. You okay? Just those 2 words, again? No question mark, like she already knew the answer. I didn't reply. The second came from Daniel in DevOps. He disabled the deployment checklists. I stared at that one longer. The checklist had been our final guardrail. A 10-item sequence I insisted on after a rollback wiped user data during beta. He turned it off because it was slowing velocity. Bitterness doesn't always come as fire. Sometimes it simmers in silence, in unread messages, in watching people dance over landmines you marked in neon orange and labeled with skulls. Julian posted a launch day hype message. Biggest rollout of the year, let's go. 8 rocket emojis. No mention of testing, no mention of infra, just vibes and blind speed. Somewhere, deep in the code, untouched in a function named handle transaction success, sat a line I didn't delete. Return false. No condition, no fallback. Just a quiet little shutdown valve waiting to be noticed. They didn't notice. And by that point, I wasn't even angry. I just waited. Because I knew exactly how long it would take before someone tried to pay for something and got nothing in return. Launch day hit like a confetti cannon. 9:00 a.m. Sharp, the site went live. I watched it from my phone, pure curiosity, not sentiment. The homepage flickered into place with the kind of over-designed minimalism that screams, we burned $600K on consultants. Buttons with micro-animations, hero text that faded in like a TED Talk intro, and a full-screen loop of stock footage showing smiling people using the app on rooftop patios no one could afford. Julian posted a selfie to LinkedIn next to a whiteboard full of fake scribbles. Proud to ship with the best team in tech. Onward and upward. Ethan retweeted it with, "This is only the beginning. Velocity matters." The company Twitter account had a countdown GIF with fireworks. One of the VCs, a guy who once posted a thread on how espresso is a metaphor for scaling startups, quote tweeted, "Just watched the demo. Next unicorn status imminent." But for every tweet shouting success, there were a dozen voices going unheard. At first, it was subtle, a single support ticket. "Hey, my payment didn't go through?" Then another. "Card declined, tried again, still failed." By noon, they were flooding in, screenshots of failed charges, angry emails, chat transcripts from frustrated users trying to buy, subscribe, upgrade, anything, and getting nothing but spinning wheels and declined notices. Internally, I imagined the panic blooming like a virus, The support team flagging potential Stripe issue in the bug tracker. Product pinging DevOps. DevOps poking engineering. Julian somewhere in the middle, over-caffeinated and under-informed, assuring everyone it was a third-party outage. They always blame Stripe first. It's the easiest lie. Back in reality, I was sitting on a folding chair beside a muddy lake, half listening to my brother talk about his new boat engine while I baited a hook. Phone on silent. No laptop. No Slack. A bass tugged the line. There's a specific kind of silence you feel when you know something no one else does. Not guilt. Not exactly pride. Just stillness. Like holding your breath during a magic trick you know the secret to. The rabbit was never in the hat. It was in your pocket the whole time. By 2 p.m., I saw the first Reddit post. New platform launched but can't check out. Anyone else? The comments piled up. The hashtags turned from Malker next big thing to what happened. Influencers who were paid to promote started deleting their posts. Refund demands started surfacing. I pictured the war room forming back at HQ. Julian sweating, Ethan pacing, marketing yelling. Stripe reps being looped in on panicked Zoom calls where no one wanted to admit they hadn't run an end-to-end payment test since I left. The logs would be there, clear, time-stamped, every failed transaction hitting the same line. Everyone met with the same return value. False. That word would be haunting them by sundown. Was it sabotage? Not by my definition. I hadn't hacked anything. I hadn't even logged in since being cut loose. The code was theirs. The branch was theirs. The failure was theirs. I just stopped fixing things. And the system, for once, showed them exactly what that meant. By 4:37 p.m., the revenue dashboard was no longer a curiosity. It was a crisis. 0. Not low. Not under target. Absolute 0. 0.02 in processed transactions across all tiers, all currencies, all funnels. The kind of clean flatline you'd expect from a maintenance window, not from the most hyped product launch in company history. The CEO, Grant Walden, who hadn't been seen in Slack since February, unless someone misspelled his name in a press release, suddenly appeared in 3 channels back to back. One-liners, no greetings. Where is revenue? Stripe issue confirmed? Fix it. He summoned the marketing VP first. Her crime? Launching the campaign too early, apparently. Never mind that she'd cleared it with Ethan. Never mind the board had approved every asset. The axe had to fall somewhere. Then it was product's turn. Accused of rolling out the pricing model without proper QA. Then infrastructure, who reminded everyone in very controlled bold text that their pipelines were green, their servers stable, and their logs showing no system-wide outages. Silence followed, until someone, probably Emily, dropped a link into the internal war room thread, a staging log from 5 days ago. File name, transaction handler, shv3 no test.js. A file Julian had flagged as redundant legacy junk. A file no one had removed from the deployment path. Line 108, return false. Kill switch for testing only. The air must have been sucked out of that room. The log timestamp was clear. Final modification, 3 days prior. The day I was let go. I wasn't watching live, but I can imagine how it unfolded. One of the junior engineers clicking into GitHub, pulling up the blame view, eyes going wide as they hovered over the commit hash. A name appearing in clean, bold letters above the offending line. Aaron Finch. It's funny how names disappear quietly when you leave. Badge revoked, email forward, access purged. But when something breaks, when something really breaks, Suddenly, the ghost comes back into focus. Suddenly, you matter again. Julian, I'm sure, insisted he'd merged the latest production branch, swore the kill switch wasn't in his build, claimed the branch had been cleaned, but Git never lies. And the test logs? They were clear. Every failed transaction echoed the same handler. Every log returned false. No fallback, no escalation, no error message, just a silent fail. The CFO reportedly asked one question out loud in front of the entire board liaison. Who the hell left this in production? Ethan didn't answer. At 5:11 p.m., an internal email went out marked urgent, requesting immediate review of the payments infrastructure, past branches, and all recent personnel changes related to billing. They didn't say my name, but I was in every log they touched, and the storm wasn't over, not even close. Legal was looped in by 5:42 p.m., too late to stop the public embarrassment, but just early enough to start drafting someone else to blame. Their first move, pull every commit log from the last 10 days and start building a timeline. The engineering lead, who'd once referred to version control as just fancy backup, now found himself knee-deep in Git history, trying to decode what happened and when. It didn't take long. My commits were clean. Each one had a message, a reason, a timestamp. Final edit to handle transaction success was 3 days ago, committed at 10:14 a.m. Same morning Ethan told me I was redundant. The commit message read, staging only bypass enabled for kill switch test. Flag to be removed pre-merge. Followed by a link to a Confluence doc explaining the flag, and a note reminding Julian to re-enable the handler logic before deploy. No one re-enabled it. The branch was merged as is, kill switch intact, by Julian. Julian's voice reportedly cracked in the war room when someone pulled up the audit trail. I thought we merged the new branch, he started to say. But the logs were merciless. GitHub doesn't care about your intentions. The tag was there. The hash was there. The pipeline ran green because the logic wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what the code told it to do. Fail silently. The phrase that echoed around the boardroom, whispered first by someone in finance and then repeated like a cursed mantra, was this. Why did we fire the guy who built it? It wasn't just a rhetorical question anymore. Investors were on calls demanding explanations. 2 key clients threatened to suspend contracts. One venture partner had already posted a passive-aggressive tweet. Love to see companies prioritize vibes over functional infrastructure. Inside the company, Slack, leadership chat went dark. One engineer described it later as the silence before the floodlights come on. Because once legal confirmed the kill switch was noted in documentation and that no sabotage had occurred, the weight shifted. Not onto the code, onto the people who ignored the code. At 6:12 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Bay Area, the same block where the HQ sat wrapped in glass and delusion. It was Grant. He tried to start casual. Hey Aaron, sorry to bother you. Hope you're doing well? The words clattered out like change falling from a broken vending machine. I let him sit in it, let him scramble for a segue. We're just trying to get our arms around some deployment artifacts. There may have been a mismerge. We were hoping you could provide some, context. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sunset spill across the lake outside my window. You check the README file? I asked. A pause. I don't think we've reviewed all of it yet. Line 108, I said. There's your context. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat, just let the silence wrap back around him like an unpaid invoice. He started to say something else, probably a veiled request, maybe a panicked offer, but I'd already hung up. I had another call coming in anyway, this one from my new client. Their platform had just onboarded its 4th enterprise customer, and every payment went through like clockwork. They called again the next morning. This time it was Ethan himself, not the assistant, not a proxy, not some intern tasked with damage control. Just him, finally stripped of the TED Talk swagger, sounding like someone who hadn't slept in 30 hours and just realized his parachute was a backpack full of bricks. Aaron, hey, really appreciate you picking up. I hadn't. It had gone to voicemail. Twice. I waited until I'd finished my walk. 2 miles, no phone, no notifications. Then called him back while stirring my coffee with the kind of slow-motion calm that only comes when you've seen a ship sink from the shore. He started, then cleared his throat. We just need some light guidance, nothing major. Just a few pieces we think you might be able to clarify. Julian's gone. The board's involved. It's not great over here. I stayed quiet. Let the hum of the kitchen fan fill the space. Silence works like gravity on men like Ethan, pulls confessions out of them whether they mean to spill or not. We reviewed the logs, he continued. The kill switch comment, the documentation trail. It's all there. It's just that, with the deployment cadence, and, look, I'm not making excuses. We just need help cleaning this up, getting it stable again, for the users. He paused again, waiting for me to throw him a rope. I let the pause stretch long enough that he'd have to live in it. Then finally, check the README file, line 108. Click. That was all they were going to get. Not because I was angry anymore, I wasn't. I'd burned through the bitterness. What remained was something colder, like the moment a surgeon closes the chest cavity and walks away. I documented everything, flagged every risk, wrote redundancies into systems no one had appreciated. The failure wasn't mine, it was theirs. I opened my laptop, checked my inbox. Another signed contract had come in, 3rd one that week. Former clients. All 3 had left the company in the past year due to cost-cutting or strategic pivots. They came to me not just because I'd built systems that worked, but because I didn't talk down to them, didn't shove buzzwords into places where process should live. At my new consulting gig, we deployed a new billing feature by lunch. I didn't even have to touch the code, just reviewed the commits, suggested 2 tweaks, and approved it. Payments processed immediately. Dashboard green. No false returns, no collapse waiting under the surface. They paid me more in 2 weeks than I'd made in my final 3 months at the old place. Not once did anyone ask me to justify my existence. I wasn't trying to teach anyone a lesson. I wasn't plotting some long-game revenge. But erasing me, that had a price. And they were just beginning to understand the interest. By end of day Thursday, the company's homepage quietly swapped out its celebratory banner for a sterile apology strip. We're currently experiencing technical issues with our payment systems. Please check back soon. No press release, no public postmortem, just a wall of silence so thick it practically screamed. But the media wasn't silent. Tech sites ran with it by Friday morning. $38 million launch, $0 revenue. What went wrong at Varionics? One blog called it the most elegant implosion since Theranos. Another published leaked screenshots from the war room, complete with blurred-out faces and an internal Slack post, time-stamped 1 hour before launch that read, "Are we sure payments are fully tested?" The board acted fast, not out of principle, but out of panic. By noon, Julian was gone. Forced resignation, no farewell post, no on to new adventures, just a name removed from the company directory like it was never there. Ethan was next. The announcement came during an all-hands Zoom. Ethan Miller will be stepping down effective immediately to pursue new opportunities. Translation: he was thrown off the life raft to buy them time. Refunds started rolling out in waves. Customers who managed to submit tickets were given free months. PR tried to spin it as an aggressive move to regain trust. But no amount of comps could hide the damage. The launch was dead. The product delayed indefinitely. Roadmaps shredded. Stock dipped 11% in one day. Then came the exodus. 3 former enterprise clients, names I recognized from my old client list, publicly announced they were moving to a more stable provider. The name wasn't mentioned, but the screenshots told the story. One even included a praise post on LinkedIn with a sly nod. Sometimes the best infrastructure is built by the people no one thought to thank. That one hit different. I didn't repost it, didn't comment, just let it breathe. Back at Varionics, the damage control meetings turned desperate. They called in consultants to audit the systems. External advisors combed through the architecture I'd built, trying to retrofit explanations for how something so trivial could unravel so catastrophically. It wasn't trivial. It was a single line, sure, but it stood on the shoulders of years of complexity. You don't throw away the foundation and expect the roof to float. In one closed-door meeting, a VP reportedly muttered, "This is the most expensive comment tag in company history." They weren't wrong, and still, no one called to apologize. No email from HR, no sheepish, "You were right," from anyone on the inside. But I didn't need it. Vindication doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes with silence, clean, sharp, and undeniable. By the weekend, my calendar was full. I had 3 more onboarding calls lined up. Clients who valued stability over flash. Ones who read documentation, who didn't ask, "Why is this here?" but rather, "What does this protect us from?" That kind of respect isn't loud, but it lasts longer than rocket emojis in a Slack post. The co-working space smelled like pine and fresh espresso, with big windows that let the morning bleed in over concrete floors and quiet ambition. My desk was clean, no clutter, no memorabilia, just a laptop, a notepad, and a green LED glow from the server monitor that told me everything was running as it should. No pings, no fires, just uptime. On screen, the new payment architecture sat humming, modular, testable, quietly elegant. It didn't need a kill switch. It had layers, fail-safes, a rollback system that actually worked, and people who used it that actually read the damn README. We'd just pushed a new feature, tiered pricing by region. Live in 47 countries in under 30 minutes. No drama, no flare-ups, just clean code doing its job. Across the table, a junior dev named Priya stared at me over her laptop. She'd joined 2 weeks ago. Smart kid, fast learner, bit of a Twitter addict, which made what she said next inevitable. "Hey, I know I probably shouldn't ask, but did you really crash an entire launch with 1 line of code?" I didn't answer right away. just sipped my coffee, let the moment sit. It's strange being mythologized for something you didn't even do on purpose. That line wasn't sabotage. It was a placeholder, a note to self that someone else refused to read. But once the story hit the internet, it grew legs. Hacker forums debated whether I'd pulled the perfect inside job. VC blogs called it the precision failure of the decade. People reached out asking if I'd teach a course, all because I wrote clear documentation, and someone ignored it. I leaned back, gave her a sideways glance. They called it sabotage, I said finally. I called it documentation they didn't read. She laughed, not the fake kind, genuine, then went back to coding. Outside the glass wall, the city moved like it always had, urgent, distracted, unaware. But I didn't feel invisible anymore, not erased. I'd built something again, from scratch, not with grudges, not with revenge, with precision. And this time, they noticed.